private property rights of
Sorry,
way.
I'm gonna
And
record
then
this.
where you see red, that's an overlay showing where the defensible space, which we're defining here as 200 feet from a house or a structure, where that extends onto the park property. So what this shows you is like where, for wildfire risk reduction purposes, where like vegetation should be targeted to reduce fuels primarily in the park.
There I am.
Question for you, Marshall.
We're
Did
Yeah.
you do
history.
this? Did you do this with ArcGIS Pro?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
thought I
ArcGIS.
recognized it. Yeah.
So
So
you
were you thinking of actually removing the trees in the defensible space?
know the work that we do for wildfire risk reduction is is kind of a cascading priority. So we're primarily focusing on fuel wise, reducing ladder fuels, fine fuels that are in a place that's receptive to a high likelihood of ignition,
Hmm.
Hmm.
ladder fuels, and then just accumulated dead wood.
Underbrush and that. Yeah, that isn't
Yeah,
that called
so
like
those are
a
like the
shaded
three
shaded
categories.
fuel break, right? I think is the term.
Yeah, that's yeah, I don't know how exactly to fit that into these areas. Um,
We have a few down trees by us too, Marshall. I don't know if you had seen it.
Uh,
Down trees are constantly happening in the natural area, so that's
Yeah.
why. And then, and the fine fuels, the weeds grow back every year. Stuff, material falls from the trees, branches falls, new trees fall, and then ladder fuels like the vines constantly regrow. So this is the kind of thing that hasn't been done in all these areas in a long time. So like there's an initial push to get it in a good condition, but then there's going to be every year an annual follow-up maintenance um, that's required. And so we need to get on the cycle of doing that. Well, first of all, we need to do the initial push, then we need to get on the cycle of regularly maintaining it. Um, so what I have, let's see, I have contractors that I can have come out and do work along. My plan is to have them come out and do work from the creek in Lower Maclay, like where the trash rack is,
Yeah.
your
up
map
the hill
disappeared, by
towards
the
the
way.
private properties. This is
That's
another map, by the way, a different version. Let me show you this one. Oh, this is the one that I emailed out. Hopefully you saw this. This is one that shows, so again, this is defensible space to homes, but it's not clipped to parkland. So where you see pink, that just means it's anything that's within 200 feet of a structure in that yellow outline.
hmm.
What it shows you is like when you zoom in, you can see here's Lower Maclay Park, Thurman Bridge, Lower Maclay Park. So you can see why all this is in defensible space all the way around these homes along the edge. So the
Hmm.
contractor work I'm hoping to do this year is going to be all along the side of Balch Creek, and it'll extend all the way to over past Cornell and like up from the Lower Maclay Trail, the trout pond with the
Hmm.
new bridges. So it'll get to about there going up to Cornell. Um, so my thought was I can have the contractors do that work. Um, One thing that I don't want them doing is using herbicide close to the creek.
Right.
So where they're close to the creek itself, there's going to be like a 10 to maybe 25-foot buffer where they're not going to use herbicide.
Hmm.
So what that means is there's a swath along the creek that it would be great to have volunteers go in and like hand pull and chop invasives. There's a bunch of like ivy, ground ivy and ivy growing up on trees, and there's downwood, and there are blackberries. So that's one option if people are interested in doing a volunteer event like that. That would be great.
Great.
As you know, that these are priority zones for ignition sources. Like we had that fire that started at the base of the giant cottonwood down there,
Right.
probably because of someone smoking a cigarette or a pipe or whatever. That's like, in my opinion, the most likely source of a fire is someone flicking a cigarette or smoking something along the edge of a trail. So that whole zone along the creek there would be a great place to do some of that work. And it's accessible to volunteers. We would lead the event. So I would get our stewardship coordinator, Monica, to lead it. And I would join into, or at least get her some standards that we want to use to make sure we're not like damaging the creek itself by trampling and walking in the creek, but working carefully along that edge. So I think that would be a great event. The other thing is when I have the contractors come out, the first thing I need to do is go flag the boundary between the parkland and the private land.
Mm-hmm.
That edge, you can see this boundary line is pretty complex.
Yeah.
It's all these private properties back up on parkland, and it's all on this really steep slope. And there's rights of way pieces in here. Like there's park properties really close to homes. So what I need to do is flag that boundary, and the goal being invasive control, but also wildfire risk reduction. But a lot of the fuels are growing on both sides of the property line.
Mm-hmm.
So my contractors can't work over onto the private side of the line.
Mm-hmm.
So anywhere you're able to wrap these neighbors along this edge into the Firewise program and talk to them about what opportunities and resources there are where they could do some fuel reduction on their property.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be really good to complement the work that the contractor is going to do.
Yeah, I think
Because,
they all have like landscapers. I just don't know to what extent those types of people want to climb
yeah,
down. I'm sure they'll find somebody.
I
Um,
don't know. Yeah, you'd have to be crazy to want to climb down that slope. Luckily, I have contractors that are pretty crazy and they do it all the time.
where
Did
your
you?
cursor is, I just found out that house is empty, like all the
Which
time.
house?
That one where your cursor is.
Oh, the one with
Yeah.
the tree
They
house.
have a decent amount of defensible space though. It like doesn't seem like it's pretty well kept.
Hmm.
But there's a number of homes that are just sitting empty, which is maybe shocking, but it's like on Savior alone, like that one. The one across the street is Claire Thayer, but her next door neighbor is not there. So
Hmm.
it's tricky
Weird.
because a lot of these folks like live in Seattle and stuff, and they just like have these homes that they don't use.
Must
Well,
be
and I guess the
nice.
good news is the contractor can do their work right up to the property line. I mean, what I'll do is try to go flag it with blue flagging along that property line, and then checking in with the neighbors if we can, and saying like, "Hey, do you see where I put that flagging? That's where my contractor is going to stop, just so you know." And
Okay.
my map GIS that I use in the field is only accurate, like at best, to about 30 feet. So
Hmm.
on some level, I'm doing some guesswork about where that line is, and
Yeah.
potentially they would be too if I asked them where they thought the line was.
Yeah.
So to the extent that they see the flagging and they're like, I don't want to deal with the blackberries down there either. If you want to estimate that your flag is 30 feet this direction, have your contractor go there, and no one really knows exactly where that line is because we're not going to survey it. Then we could get some more of that critical zone addressed for
That's pretty
fuel.
sweet. I mean, if you're willing to do that, I bet you there are neighbors that are willing to say,
Like,
"Hey, it's vague."
Oh, there's a lot. I know it happens all the time. They're like, please come closer to my yard. And I'm like, I can push it a little bit as long as I'm legitimately trying to identify the boundary. But it's kind of important that I talk to them because there are some people that are like, stay the heck off my property or I'm gonna get really mad.
So
Um,
none of that, I don't think, Nora, you may know better too. None of that has fencing, right? That's all that area that's the houses along that side of Balch, right? That all, I don't think any of them have fencing, right?
no.
No,
Um,
because it's just a steep drop off
Yeah,
pretty
just
yeah,
much.
a crazy, like, there's insane erosion there.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, landslides all along there. It's
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 crazy.
kind of a
Like,
nightmare.
honestly, like, I don't know the fact that there is no ground cover, say at that last house there at the end of Savior, that is empty. There's like barely any ground cover, so I don't know what kind of erosion measures can be taken there, but
Yeah, it's kind of a nightmare along there. Most partly because there's so much landslide activity.
I did talk to the woman who lives on the other side of Thurman Street from me. That we talked about her
Oh yeah.
property right there.
Mm.
She's at the head of the bridge, and she was wondering if there's an opportunity to remove that tree that has all the invasives on climbing on it. And I was not able to, I don't know where her property line is actually. But apparently that's like a nuisance tree that she would be more than happy to see gone because it just all it does is host
Yeah.
all this ivy and
Is
it's
that
like
the
hanging
gabled
on, it's
house
like
across
hanging
from
over the
you?
bridge onto the power lines like it hasn't been limbed.
Okay.
It could potentially like, lose limbs and drop limbs onto the bridge and block traffic. So it's not great. Like in the event of a fire, I could see that becoming a tree that, blocks critical evac routes and whatnot. So I
This
don't know.
tool, I think y'all are familiar with this Portland
Portland
Maps
map. Yeah.
website.
Yeah.
This is one of the best tools we have for figuring out where we
And
can
like I
do what.
can't I can't see if I guess that's on her property maybe. I can't tell because the canopy is so hard to know like where the
Yeah, I think it's on her property. It's right on the corner. It might even be in the right of way. So stuff like that is a maybe, and we have to go through urban forestry.
but she
So
would even
we
if
can
she got
ask.
rid of it, she would still need to pull a permit to get rid of it, right? Even though it's on her property
Yeah.
She
or no.
may or may not be allowed to get rid of it.
Right. But seeing as it's like you can kind of see how it's like hanging over that
Oh
I
bridge.
yeah,
think
I mean, you don't
It's
have to
super
argue
I think she
about
has to
why.
make a case for it, Nora, and then they'll let her replant something else on her property.
okay, but urban forestry wouldn't remove it for her. She would have to hire a contractor to come out, or
Depends
it's
on where it is. It kind of looks like it's in the maybe or originates in the right of way.
yeah.
So then I actually don't know the answer to that. We'd have to, this would all have to be decided by urban forestry, and they have a
Okay, so
bunch of
should
rules
she get
about
a hold of
who.
them?
Yeah,
Okay.
she can put in a request to 823 tree, or she can email it to them and say, hey, I think this is a hazard tree. Can you send an inspector to look at it? That's what you would do, and she could put in a note that says, I think it's a hazard to my property, and I'd like to see it removed and see what happens.
Can you,
Like,
in order to make that determination, is there any way that like your assessment of the situation could help them come like your 2 cents could help move the needle to get a determination like that?
yeah, partly. Um,
Ooh, that's good to know because we have a tree that's on our other the property above us, and one of the trees already fell, and the other one looks like if it does fall, it's going to hit our house. So who besides you, Marshall, who else do I call? You
uh,
said three, two,
it's
three.
just urban forestry, and
Okay,
it's so just to be clear, if it's on private property, I don't have any influence over that. I
Okay.
can only influence Forest Park property.
I'm not sure. I'd have to see. I have to go to this map to see where their
Yeah,
tree line ends.
because you have all those rights of way surrounding you. That's where it's
Right.
tricky for your house, is all those rights of way. That's what I'm saying about this one. To me, it kind of looks like it's originating from the right of way, but it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I'll go look.
So the another option, so that's one activity I'm suggesting is that manual removal volunteers along the creek. Another one would be, helping with outreach to the neighbors along that side for
Mhm,
this upcoming contractor job.
mhm,
And then the next idea I had was to work with her. I forgot what you said her name was, but this person and the other neighbors along here in this little patch of forest where we spend a lot of energy, but it's like it needs constant ongoing upkeep. And
yeah.
it's a great spot for the Firewise volunteers to do their thing.
Mhm.
And what we haven't done in the past is like really aggressively address the property line of that property and the next two, and then this one as well that I think but they have all that bamboo and there's weedy vines going up the trees. So there is potential to do another cool event if we can, especially if we can get more done along that property line.
Yeah. But you had suggested earlier that we look for a place where your contractors can't go so that we kind of maximize. And I'm wondering if that
Yeah.
25-foot creek buffer area is somewhere that contractors can go, then maybe we do focus on private parcels where there's fuel buildup.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend prioritizing anything you can do on private
Okay.
parcels
I
as
did
as
want
a
to
first
wonder,
choice.
it seems like they threw a whole bunch of bamboo here down the hill. And it just, we cleaned that up, but it looks like you just cut it and threw it down the hill towards,
Yeah.
into the creek. But
Well, it's a great opportunity to outreach and have a friendly conversation with people that don't realize that that's a really big problem and just
yeah,
remind them like, hey, please don't do that. And here's
yeah.
why. And furthermore, we're going to organize your community members to come help clean it up. So hopefully that convinces you not to do it in the future.
Yeah.
Marshall, as my thought was that it would be really helpful for our Firewise community to know what the state of vegetation is along that initial boundary map that you showed me, like going parcel by parcel to kind of have a repository of data where that we can all access, that you guys can access, that we can access, so we can see where everything's at, where we can report buildup if we see it, where we can, just what do you suggest for that?
Well, I
Should
mean, we could do that. I could help with that on the parks property pieces. I wouldn't probably do an inventory of fuels on private property. I mean, you guys could without me, but I shouldn't be doing that. I can certainly do it on the parks property.
No,
And
that's
then it
what I
would
meant.
just
That's why
be
I meant
like,
the periphery because that's all parks.
yeah, yep, that
Everybody,
map with the red.
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess my question would be, what would you want that to look like? Like what form of data would you want? Like a
Like when
verbal note or like a
maybe a
map?
visual and then also like when it was last addressed and a place where neighbors can put in notes to like update it, like if they see something like a down tree, just so that we can kind of have it a, a single place where we can all go to kind of
Look at the
look
state
at
of
the state
things.
of that
Yeah.
boundary to make sure that it's being kept up because I know it's a lot for you alone, it's a lot for us alone even, which is why the block captains are going to be really helpful. Um, but yeah, just a place where we can kind of have all the data in one spot. And I don't know if that system that you were using, that GIS system, is something where we can move that or have some of that data available to us on a separate system, or whether we should just have a spreadsheet. Like I'm
It's
not.
too bad
We can,
you can't overlay this Portland maps on top of that. Can you? Can you overlay this
Yeah, they're
Portland
both
on top of that?
GIS. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, that you can. Yeah, and you can do a lot of this. You remember in GS, one of the things you can do is like you can pick different things that are important to you. Like if you're picking a ski area, you can pick
Yeah.
slope, things like that, and that can all be put into a map with
Because
a GIS map.
that would be helpful for me to talk to my neighbors, to just show them because a lot of the time it just seems so out of mind. Like they're like understanding what I'm saying, but they're not realizing how close it is to their property. So for me to say, like, this is right there, it's abutting your backyard and you need to address it.
I mean, it'd be so great if there was an app where everybody could periodically just, who backs up to the park could periodically just snap a photo, once a
State of,
month.
yeah, current
Yeah,
state
they
of,
snap a photo, they kind
yeah.
of describe it verbally. Like even we could get just an analysis. Is there
The problem with the
vertical and
photo is it's
horizontal
tough to convert it
separation?
in. The problem with the photo is it's tough to convert it into something you can stick, quantitate it and stick it in the map, which is what I think you'd want to do.
Well, I think you
You
do
know, like
both, right? Like you have a visual and then you also have a verbal, somebody would describe like, oh yeah, like this is there's a significant amount of ladder fuel, whatever. So it would just be great if we had an easy way for residents to report regularly and have that information go into this repository that then can be mapped. And I'm not sure what's available. I sent you that place, that thing, Marshall Landfire. I don't know if you saw it, but it's,
I tried opening it up and just started poking around on it, but I just scratched the surface. I'm not that tech savvy, so I feel bad. I don't know how to
I know,
help
me
with
neither.
this
I don't know.
level of
It
well,
looks
let's try
really
technology.
it.
powerful.
I know it
I think the
exists.
first step is we have to figure out what we want to measure. Make a list, steepness, ladder fuel quantity, extent of brush, underbrush. You need a list, and that's the starting point.
But we already know what all that stuff is. Like we already
Do
know.
we?
Yeah, like we already know what a healthy area looks like versus, yeah, like there's a bunch of fuel buildup. Like, I don't think that's the issue. The issue is like, what is the system? What is the platform that we're going to use to have folks be able to easily move their information into so that Marshall can access it, right? And then just have that be updated regular. So we can be the point people to make sure it's getting updated by all the residents, and then he can just access it with his contractors. So it's like there's a workflow that we can establish so that there's a kind of a live wire communication at all times between parks and like given Firewise communities. That's been my question the whole, that's why I've been digging around in the GIS area because, and what I discovered, I think along with Bill, is that it's like it's like pretty technologically involved. But
Yeah,
I
I
I
can
don't know if it has
confirm
to
that
be.
because so we have within parks we have systems that do that for our teams. Because okay, for an example, down trees. So when a tree falls and it crosses a road or a trail in the park, and that's our responsibility to clear it. But we have multiple teams that do that. And so before it was really hard because someone would send in a message and saying, "Hey, I just passed a down tree on this trail at this mile marker."
Hmm.
And that was about it. And then like multiple teams might go there looking for it, but someone else has already cleared it, stuff like that. So now we have a system that we recently developed where there's a shared map. So
Hmm.
everybody has access to the shared map on their phone and it's live, it's like real time. And you can zoom in and out, and then anyone can add data who has
Can we
permission.
do it too, or just parks people?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like you just said, the technology is too involved. So it's got to be like carefully maintained and controlled by like an IT department that's
Yeah.
funded with resources to do that. It's just not at the point where that I know of that it's available where like a community group could just take it and run with it. I
Could
don't know
we
that that
main
exists.
could we maintain a spreadsheet that you guys access regularly to update those maps that you have that
I
your
think
teams oversee?
you and I could work out an agreement where we do that. I don't
Okay.
see why we couldn't set that up.
Yeah, I mean, if we come up with like a template, not just for us, but for all the Firewise communities, and then that way going forward, it'll be something that is more user friendly on for all parties involved.
Yeah, I'd be happy to work on that. And I think, there's lots of technology we can use. It might not be perfect, but anybody with a phone can drop a pin and set a GPS point.
Mhm.
stick that into a spreadsheet or send it to me or whoever, and then add like a verbal description of what's at that location. Like, and that to me is a really useful amount
Okay.
of information for me to come up with scopes of work and schedule work.
Okay, great.
So if it's as simple as people seeing something, going on their iPhone map or their Google map and dropping a pin, sending me that location and a note that says, I was here on this date and I saw a tree fell and there's a huge pile of new branches and stuff down that looks like it would be good to clear out because we're in the defensible space zone.
Okay. Great.
You
Well,
know, if we
let's
keep
do
track of that, the other good thing is it's seasonal. So that work, there's like a priority time of the year to do that work. So if we collect all that information in one place and then wait till it's the right time of year, and then we can go use that collection of information to develop a scope of work. That's a good way to think about it.
Okay. Well, we'll get to it. Bill, maybe you started to do like a spreadsheet, right, with all the parcels.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe we can just pull out those parcels that are boundary parcels, and then we can go to the
Well,
neighbors, and we just need to get those neighbors, quote unquote, online with us um, to start working on that communication. Well, maybe we have a form that they can fill out periodically. I'll look and see if there's any apps that are usable for this. That area that you're in now, is that Quimby? Raleigh, that's
That's
right.
Raleigh. So just like as an example, it could be as easy as like the person who lives in this house standing in their backyard sends me a point for a location like right there with their
Yeah,
phone and a note that says, "Hey, I noticed the black bear is getting really big back there, back in that area on the park's property."
yeah,
And then I can log that and have it in my
great.
like put it into work plans for my staff or contractors.
Yeah, and you can let us know, like we can kind of workshop this as we go, but you can let us know what's helpful, what's not helpful, um, in terms of data, or like if Bill was mentioning the slope, if you need a special kind of contractor to come out. I don't know how they would know the slope, but I'm assuming.
I already know that it's all steep.
Yeah, yeah, it's
So
that
I
whole
don't
area
really
you're
have
in is like the cliffs of
yeah,
insanity.
I've already figured that out. So have my contractors, but
Yes.
they're
Yeah.
well paid, so they handle it.
Yeah, good. Well, this is great. I think I'm excited about this because I think actually this is what Rebecca was showing the most concern about at our last kind of meeting that we had, um, was just addressing this defensible space around the community, in addition to home hardening, right? Because no matter how much we harden our homes, if a fire's coming in full speed, there's no amount of home hardening will
Yeah, it
will
doesn't make a
Yeah,
difference.
save us.
we
But
can
yeah,
do what we can do, but in the end, if there's a, 80 miles per hour wind and there's been 3 months of drought and there's a spark, it doesn't matter how much vegetation management we do if you're that close to the wildland urban interface kind of situation, it's going to be a problem.
So, Marshall, I have a dumb question. So, right now we're looking at that area near Balch Creek, and we're saying that that would be good for the next,
Yeah.
like community help. So, how are we going to do what we have been doing, like every quarter or so, just going around that perimeter with the volunteers, if there's area that volunteers could safely do that, or like what do we have as far as timeline? Because I know some people would have a concern with like, okay, well, when would they maybe get around to my house? Or how would I be able to flag something we already addressed how they could flag something maybe that's super important that they feel like needs to be addressed immediately. But like, what do we think is our time frame in terms of maintenance for the perimeter? And how would we like manage that, I guess?
I mean, it's going to be variable just to zoom out. So you see Forest Park and how big the perimeter of Forest Park is. Like that's the scope of the work I have to do with the resources that I have. So your area is this one piece of it, but I have to justify when
Yeah.
I do what, where. An active and like interested Firewise group like yours is really good justification for me to dedicate resources and time to that area. So that helps a lot, but I just can't guarantee I can always jump on it right away.
Yeah, no, I guess so then it'll just be, where you see or other people have observed that there's going to be an increased risk. That's going to obviously take the priority, but we just don't know where because it'll just depend on what the growth is and what the circumstances are around that area, I guess.
Yeah, it's always
Okay.
going to be kind of like case by case, and we have to analyze the situation and make our priorities. And it's going
Okay.
to include like access, the fuel buildup, the potential for ignition, like the risk to local neighbors and homes. All that stuff will get factored in, and then our available resources, and then we'll just do the best we can.
Because some people have said, well, it would be great to wait and see if some of this could get funded through, Parks and Rec or whatever, but they also have the means to maybe privately take care of it. And I would just probably have them go ahead and privately take care of it if they felt like it was that much of a danger and, it wasn't showing up as that high of a priority compared to other areas.
Even then, though, they would still have to go through Marshall because it's Parks property that you're talking about, right?
Yeah, it abuts Parks property. Everyone's really fuzzy about their defining line, property line.
Yeah. Well, so that's something I wanted to talk about today too. So as we're talking about these different opportunities to do volunteer events, this is a really good example. So let's say we do decide this is one we want to take on at the next opportunity. And we're working with the neighbor here, so we can work right up to that property line and then over
Marshall,
it.
your map's not on. Were you trying to put your map on? Oh,
Oh,
you're just doing an example. Never mind. I thought
Do
you
you
were
see
showing us on a map.
do you see the Portland maps?
I don't. Am I the only one who doesn't see it? I
you're
just see
the
my.
only one. You're the only.
I think I'm sharing the Portland map
You
screen.
are.
Yeah, you
Where
are.
am I? What's going on?
You're missing out on the show and tell.
Have you not been seeing the maps?
No, I saw the first ones, but then I don't have this one.
Huh.
What's going on? I feel
I'll
like I'm
try to
like,
read. I'll redo it.
there you go.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Now I'm back. It's back.
Okay. So this is a good example. So say we take on this area as the next event. And we've worked in this before, but what we haven't done is down here, if you're familiar with that little stairway,
Yep.
Yeah.
and then there's the street, which is Vaughn Street. So you can kind of see these faint lines, but this is actually Vaughn Street right of way, this big wide right of way
Oh, okay.
where the little stairway comes down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then there's this house that owns this property, but then this little strip here is city owned.
What about those strips are weird to me because
This is all right of way.
that little city-owned strip, we have a few of those sprinkled throughout the neighborhood, and
Yeah,
it's unclear to me who's in charge of that.
I was going to mention that too. That's a good question. So another opportunity for an event, if you want to do one on park property, would be to do work on those. So like that's one right there, right? Is that the right one?
Yeah, but Mimi's not gonna
Yeah,
like
right. So
that.
it looks like someone may
That's
be
her
using
that's her
that. It's like,
strawberry garden and her
yeah, you
trampoline.
see that a lot. But more importantly, like this example, so that's just our responsibility as part of basically part of Forest Park, even
Oh,
though
is
it's
it? Okay,
separated
so
by this
you
right.
guys are authorized to work on that.
Yep, yeah.
Great.
We're also
Great.
authorized to work in this right of way. So all
Okay.
this vegetation is really covered in blackberries and clematis. It's like a ideal spot to do a fuel reduction project.
I have a
So
question. What
yeah,
if a tree falls, but there's nobody around? No, I'm just kidding. What if
Hear
a tree
it.
falls? But
someone will still blame the city.
yeah,
Is that
someone will blame the
what you're
city. What
asking?
if it falls? It came out of Parks property, but right on the boundary. Like if one of my big leaf maples that um like sheds a limb, but the limbs fall onto my property. Is it because it's Park's tree, do I call you or do I call a contractor?
Um, I can't come get it off your property,
Okay.
so I
But
guess
can
you're stuck
I
getting a
push it
contractor.
down the slope?
You could put it
Nora,
on Park's
Nora,
property
you
and
call me
then
and we and Bill and we push it back on a city
Like,
property.
what if there's a huge
that, just so you know, that
limb?
guy on Belgrave, that's what he says is the stuff he dumps in the park is because it fell from a park tree onto to Belgrave Street, and he was just doing a public service by clearing the street.
I mean, is that wrong?
I
It is.
don't blame him.
Yeah.
Technically, I think it's illegal dumping.
But it's just a part of the tree, and the source was from the city property.
Yeah, because they don't
But you
maintain.
know how, like, if there's a tree and it part of it grows over the property line onto your over top of your property,
Yeah.
the part that's over top of your property is yours, even if the tree originates from your neighbor's side of the fence.
But in order to limit, I have to go through urban forestry, right? Like, let's say it's a tree grow. We see a lot of this. There's a lot of trees growing in the right of way. Can you do me a favor?
Yeah,
Marshall, can you move the map up to Savior? Like, I'm gonna go to the spot where we were working last. Yeah, up here to the left. Go to the left. Okay, so right there between 3434 Northwest Savior and 3332.
this one.
Yeah, so
Oh
this our
yeah.
last fuel mitigation event was here
Yeah.
with the property owners who are next to 3434 and then a bunch of the neighbors. There is also a power line here. There's a bunch of those trees in the right of way that are caught up that are in the power lines and stuff. So it becomes a question of do we call PGE? Do we call urban forestry? Because they're shedding limbs onto private property as well. Does it become the private property owner's issue to deal with? Like it's all this weird overlapping gray area. And I feel like some of it is really hindering critical Firewise work because there's too many different bureaucracies rather than like one person that we can go to say this is not this is not fire safe, it needs to go now, it's like high priority because it's whatever limbs touching power lines. And is there
Yeah,
currently a method to fast track um like I guess it's just so strange to me that uh with a property issue like this where the lines are unclear and then you can see where your arrow's at right now there.
yeah.
That's
That's not their property, but they
that's
clearly felt justified using it.
yeah, but there that if you go lower down there, that's actually city property. That's another one of those city
This
strips. No, go towards the street.
this
Up.
way,
Yeah. To the right. To the right. Yeah.
that
If you click on that,
that's right of way.
yeah. So that would be you, right? I mean, that could be your contractors there, right?
Nope. This is a bad example for me because I have nothing to do with anything in this whole picture.
Oh,
Nothing at all.
so
Yeah.
you can't touch it because it's not adjacent to Forest Park.
Yeah, well, it's right of way means it's not owned by anybody. But it's the responsibility of the adjacent landowner. So
Is it?
like my
Oh,
understanding is there's a line down the middle of this right of way,
uh-huh.
and this owner is responsible for this half of it. This owner is
Mm.
responsible for this half of it. And that means paying for all the work that happens there on trees. It's like a street tree.
Wait, Marshall, can I get you to go? Sorry, this is a digression, but then I have a question. Can you go to my
Yeah.
property at
Yeah.
3938 Northwest Gordon? So if we go higher up, you see where there's to the left of my property, there's two sort of um there's no
These.
numbers. Yeah. So who is that city? That like what is
No, that belongs to your neighbor.
that belongs to that neighbor.
Todd.
But then
The
there's that,
lefty.
but
That's
then that thin line between us is
That's right away. So when I
that's
click
right.
on it and there's a red dot, that means there's no tax lot. It's just telling me there's no data because it's a right of way.
oh,
Okay.
Audrey,
If I
then it's
click on
your
something and it
problem.
outlines it in blue, then it's a private, it's a property and it'll show who owns it. But a
Yeah.
red dot means you're just in a right of way.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's why we had that tricky issue with your trees before because your house is like right up to the property line and then the
Mhm.
trees were like on this right of way.
Yeah.
But
We
you
Are
can
you
work on
you're
that, right,
responsible for
Marshall?
those just like street trees?
But you can work on that area, right?
he has.
I can because this is Forest Park. So what that
Yeah,
means
so
is
it's touching.
half of
Okay.
this right of way is my responsibility, just
Okay.
like half of it is Audrey's responsibility. You know what I mean?
So
It's
Yeah.
like
if we
I'm
so
in charge of this. Yeah.
so the right of way that is between me and the property owner that doesn't have a number,
Hmm.
that one half he shares and half I share.
Yeah.
And then we also share with 3909 who's above me.
Yeah. Well, you have just a direct property line between you.
Oh, okay. But that strip that's to the left of us,
Right.
That's
that
right of way.
is
Yeah.
all three of us have right of way responsibilities.
Yes.
Yeah. Theirs is just like here.
Okay.
But Marshall can work
Yours
on
is
that
here.
part because
He
it's
can't.
touching Forest Park.
Yeah.
No,
No, mine's down
no.
here.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to say. He's helped me before because he's been kind, but
Marshall,
that's
Marshall,
That's
not,
you can
private.
sneak in there. We're not going to say anything.
I'm not going to make him do something he's not supposed to.
I'm just
What
kidding.
what needs to happen there? You have a tree that came down in there?
Yeah.
How
And
big?
I'm worried that there's another one that's up there and it's covered in ivy and I don't think I can get up there. And I would have to scale down from Thurman to get
Is
down.
it
I
is it
believe
on
that
there?
property is being listed too, right?
I don't know the
I saw a sign
parcel.
for
It's
I
it's
saw
a
a sign for,
parcel. Yeah, it's a parcel, but so it's there's nothing built on there yet.
yeah.
But
It's crazy because it's like a buildable property,
I don't know if it is
technically.
built. It's so steep. I mean, I don't know what they're, although they've built on steeper before. So I don't know how to get the ivy off. I don't want to rappel down there, but it looks like they're not taking care of it. So I feel like I need to rappel down and get it.
Yeah, if it's on the private property, you don't have a lot of options. You can't touch it. I can't touch it without their permission.
Yeah,
And it'd be really hard to, because it's so narrow here, it'd be really hard to figure out exactly where a tree is or isn't.
right.
You might be able to, but again, it's awkward because like this right of way is their responsibility
Hmm,
and the
hmm.
neighbors.
And
And
that is a
yours is,
totally unmaintained parcel, by the way.
yeah.
That's that right there, that one that's next to that right of way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just vacant land.
yeah, because
That would be one that this is why I'm hoping they have new codes in the pipeline, um, where they can have vegetation maintenance be a mandate for property owners.
A lot of people wouldn't like that. Like all these people would be pretty unhappy because
I mean,
this is a mess back there.
it
So
is
this
a
is
mess.
another example. We've talked about this, this area down here before.
Mhm.
yeah,
This big right of way, it just looks like it's part of the forest down there, but it's half of it is the responsibility of these homes. The other
Mm,
yeah.
half is
That's
mine because this is Forest Park.
That's one of my neighbors there. I can't remember.
Yeah.
She's 38, 39. So the white, it looks like a white house, 38,
Yeah,
39.
right.
She was asking me about at what point does she take responsibility for doing stuff because she has concerns. Um, and and I
To,
said,
to this
well,
point right here,
yeah, but she
not
can't. I
beyond.
mean, it's such a steep drop off. Like what she's
Yeah.
concerned about are things that are probably still on her own property line. So
I'm
I feel
I
like she probably has.
confused.
Yeah, and I've walked back there looking to see if it could be a volunteer event down there, and it's just too hard to access. It's too steep and dangerous.
But I'm confused. So if the right of way is touching Forest Park property, right?
Yeah.
Then you can clear it, right? All of it, right? I'm
I wouldn't
unclear
use
on
the
that.
word I wouldn't
Yeah.
use the word clear.
I
I
mean,
can
just you can clean it up.
Maintain it.
I can remove invasive plants and do some selective low limbing and remove like dead wood as needed.
Right. So these people on Gordon who back down to this right of way, they could count on Forest Park or the Park Bureau to maintain that right of way because it's bordering
Yeah,
property, right?
half of it.
Just half?
Yeah, because it's whoever is next to
Shared.
it, that's
Yeah.
their half right here. And
Right.
then this
But
is Park's property, so our half is the other half along here.
since the we talked about that 30-foot like kind of squishy zone of I don't know how
Finding the line. Yeah.
like I think some people don't even know where the line is because they just don't go down there.
Most of them probably don't, unless they had it surveyed because they bought it recently or something, but most people don't.
Okay.
A question you mentioned a while back, how do we get navigate? Who do we go to? Didn't somebody say they hired a coordinator to work for the different groups?
Yeah, the
And
wildland
it was
coordinator is currently being filled. They created the position in 2022
is
and
this something that she could navigate the structure? And you mentioned who do we call and contact? Would she be the person that would be a good person to navigate the structures and say it belongs to these people? Because so
well,
many of these times, who does it belong to? Could she do
yeah,
that?
I think they're figuring out exactly what the wildland, I think they're all figuring this out now because this is a brand new position. I don't think it's existed before, right, Marshall?
Yeah, not that I know of.
Yeah, so I think it's gonna hopefully be some kind of like the buck stops here kind of person who's
Yeah,
gonna
that would be
be
nice.
hopefully in charge of all natural resource management and coordinating all the bureaus and EVAC and OEM and PBEM and just anything related to wildfire issues. I'm hoping that's what they're going to be. It's like the ultimate point person that has the authority to do all that stuff and to
What do you
make
know about it, Marshall?
I don't
Marshall, do you know
know.
anything about it?
Honestly,
No.
I don't, and I'm kind of surprised that I don't. Maybe something that I've heard about, but it's in a different bureau. I'm actually not sure for some reason. I should find out. I'm surprised I don't know more about it. But
well, Kim also didn't quite know what the position entailed, and she sent me a description, and I'm still a little confused as to whether this person will have authority to say give mandates to the different bureaus to like change code or for example with this right of way stuff. I mean, I think the city should be in charge of right of way stuff, right? Like that it makes no sense to have property owners take care of right of ways. Especially when it comes to wildfire mitigation. There's some people just don't have the funds to do it, you know? Um,
you know what I think it comes from is like street parking strip, street trees, and maintaining street trees.
and that
Like
makes sense, but it's kind of
the
like
city doesn't pay for it.
yeah, but down here it becomes a real like life or death issue, right? All these like random right of way. These are not streets. These are like random strips in a forest that you apparently can't touch because of these are almost arbitrarily drawn lines. And I don't know like why they're even in there. Um, do they have
Yeah,
because I back right up to Forest Park property, right? On
you
mine.
do.
Like,
Yeah.
so that it's not like you need to have a right of way to separate you from a park's property.
No, they're just like streets that were laid out on paper when they created private property lines.
Yeah.
They
And
start by like platting, like laying out these where streets would go. They have to do that first before anything gets built.
yeah.
So like all these lots over here where my cursor is, like those are all laid out, and then there's a street because you have to have a street frontage if that's ever going to have a house built on it. So they have to decide where streets go, and put them
Is
on
that
paper.
parks down there? Is that parks down there above Sussex?
Yeah, so I was going to say one other thing I wanted to note was there's all this is parks property. So like this is White Shield.
Yeah.
Everything, all this is Forest Park. And so this area, there's a massive amount of work that needs to happen in this area for restoration, soil invasives and wildfire hazard stuff. It's all
There's a
needed
camper
work.
there too.
Yeah, tons of work needed in there, and it's on the list as a priority. And at this point, we're waiting for funding availability to take that on to the tune of, like probably a couple $1 million. Right
Jesus.
now, we're doing a ton of work in another section of the park to the north, but this is on the docket, right? So what I don't want is for volunteers to go in and start spending a lot of energy because hopefully in the next, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 5 years, we're going to come in and do a huge contractor run restoration job in here. And it
And a
can
homeowner.
address this zone down here, everything around White Shield, everything down in this area, and all the way along St. Helens.
But it's safe to say, Marshall, if there's a homeowner in Gordon who has a concern and they do about that right of way, that they should at least, at the very least, do their property to as much as they can determine their property line and maybe just a little bit extra because that would cover the right of way.
Yeah,
Right.
and I would
Okay.
say even better, reach out to me and we can engage in the same relationship that I have with other folks like Rebecca and yourself,
Mhm.
both of you, where I'll team up with an individual who's showing interest and we'll figure out how we can address the area of the park near them and help coordinate with Kim to get her looking at, anything they could do on their property and then help coordinate with volunteer events like Firewise volunteers who might come and help them on their own private property because they can do that. And if they lack the resources to do it themselves, then we could do it by partnering and having like a volunteer event that helps on their property.
Awesome.
So an
Okay. Yeah,
individual that wants to should, if they're willing to, reach out to me and
sure.
and partner on and do another partnership like that. I'm always open to that as long as I have capacity.
Yeah, and that'll be great because she's kind of right in the center there where we have a couple of elderly folks. And
Yeah.
what if she can do that, she can bring attention to her neighbors about what can be done, and we could kind of work our way through there. Because I've been trying to work on that side for a while. We have one renter and the others are homeowners. And so just trying to make sure that everybody takes an active interest in the fuel problem that could be coming up their hill would be good. So I'm sorry, guys, I have to leave, but this is being recorded, right? So
It
Nora, I
is.
will be able to get it.
Yeah.
Okay. But thanks so much. I took a lot of notes and yeah, whenever we decide to do the Balch Creek, like just let me know. I'll
Yeah.
be there with my hiking.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
You and Bill are going to Ralph's meeting, right?
I am. Yeah, on the 17th,
When the time comes, yeah, but
13th.
that's next week.
Yeah. 13th. Yeah,
I,
I'll be
I,
there.
I will not be, but I think Rebecca also showed an interest, so
And
maybe
in goats.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe you guys can get clarity on that wildland coordinator job, Bill, because I do think Kim will be there, and I've been asking about it. So
Let me
Okay,
write it.
I think
I'll ask you about it.
if you guys could ask that question of like, is this person going to be where the buck stops? Because my problem is that there's not a single. We have about 15 people working at PBEM, another 10 people at OEM. I have never heard once from them in regards to fire. So I don't know what they're doing or not doing.
So it's
And
called the Wild Line
while
Coordinator.
I think it's let me just check what the actual name of the um
What
uh,
she's thinking, Audrey, how does Derek spell his name?
Oh, Derek.
Okay, thank you.
Wildfire Strategic Planning Manager.
Okay, hold on.
What bureau is it?
I do
Wildfire
not know. It says this position will work collaboratively across bureaus with city and regional stakeholders and local, regional, state, and federal response partners. This position is expected to address multiple existing as well as pursue new strategic planning efforts to coordinate City of Portland policy to address the threat of wildland fire. So that would
Okay.
be like redoing the codes, I guess. This position will manage the work of key programmatic staff to assist with policy development, grant applications, and other development efforts that address the dynamic threat wildfire poses to our city and region.
Sorry, no, Nora, it's called Wildfire Coordinator
Wildfire Strategic Planning Manager.
Planning Manager. Okay, got
This
it.
position will work within, okay, so this position will work within the Portland Fire and Rescue Wildland Fire Program and collaborate with internal coordinators in the Bureau and the city for its wildland fire prevention, emergency operations, and training efforts. We're
It's
looking
Fire
for,
Bureau. That's why I'm not that familiar with it because it's a Fire Bureau position.
yeah, but I mean, this is the point is that I guess they work collaboratively across the bureaus because we're kind of in
Yes.
this pre 9/11
Yeah,
moment where everyone
yeah,
has
it's like
different is
an
the
actual job for what Kim tries to do mostly.
Yeah, I mean she's going way above and beyond, I think.
Mhm.
All right, peace
Yeah,
out,
she's
guys.
like a communications person. Thanks, Audrey.
It says we are looking for candidates with backgrounds in national incident management, incident command system and forestry, and wildfire coordinating and wildfire suppression backgrounds. So I don't know, like from this description, I'm not getting a strong sense of whether they'd be how involved they would be in vegetation management, in like natural resource management,
I
because
think it's a policy focused job. So they're going to work on trying to upgrade or update the environmental zoning code, for example, so that people can establish defensible space easier.
yeah, yeah,
I
that
think
would.
it's that kind of thing.
But then also like it looks like development, which would be grants, I guess FEMA to get
Mhm.
your bureau more money for the work that you're wanting to do, probably quicker and at greater scale. Uh, I don't know.
Yeah, could be.
I,
Hey, Nora, I've got a few more minutes, but I wanted to mention one more thing real
sure,
quick,
yeah, yeah.
because I said something to you that I realized was wrong the other day.
Oh yeah.
Um, the one other spot we were talking about, and I think it's still probably too steep and not appropriate for a volunteer event, but I'm gonna think more about it now. Is Tom's property.
Yeah,
So if you still see my map, that's his house,
I
right?
do.
And then he owns this,
Hmm.
and this neighbor owns this. But below them, where that big blackberry patch is, that's the right of way. So that is not necessarily all his. Same as we were talking before, like, yeah, part of that right of way may be his responsibility, but ultimately it's surrounded by the parkland. And it's your street that continues all the way along that slope and
Yeah,
ends where that giant patch of blackberry is. So that is something that I would consider just taking on as
yeah,
part of my contractor job.
yeah.
So I just wanted to correct what I said earlier and let you know, like I'll be looking at trying to manage that
Okay,
slope now.
okay, great. Well, I'll
If he
let
wants
Tom
to do
know and
like a
then
volunteer event on his side, or maybe work with this neighbor on their private property too, we could look at that. And he may have a way to access it that's safe, and so we could consider that if he wants to. But
okay,
the big bad patch of blackberry down here, that would be something I would try to take care of with contractors.
okay.
So I think looking at if people want to do an event over here, I think that would be awesome. And just so you know, we've in the past we've worked in this area,
Hmm.
but if we go to the other side of the stairway down here, this frontage right here needs a ton of work. And we could have volunteers work on that, and it would be like a really big uplift because I think it's in really bad shape.
Well, and also we regularly have, if you move further down that street towards St. Helens, we regularly have encampments there.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean this frontage right here would be a good one to look at, especially now that I realize we own this little piece here. That makes a lot of sense that we would, look at this. And if if you look at it and you're like, we don't want volunteers, it's too nasty, we don't want them to deal with that, then I can wrap that into my staff or my contractor's job. But I think it'd be a neat one for to continue sort of like the Firewise community adopting this area just because it's a really good
I think
example of a
it's
place.
technically, Bill, do you remember? Is that technically still part of our Firewise? It is, right?
Yeah, it is.
I
So
think
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
so.
part of, I think that's part of our, uh, I'm trying to remember because we do extend beyond the bridge. We
Yeah.
go 2 blocks.
Well, we go all the way out to the almost, yeah, quite a ways out, further towards St. Helens. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can send you the map.
I've got you going to this yellow line here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously we haven't reached out to too many neighbors down there.
No,
Yeah,
that's an area we just really have not covered it all down there along
a lot of
Wilson and
stuff down here.
33rd.
Yeah. I
But
think in my
anyway,
head it was less of a concern than people that are deeper into the woods because there's hydrants and access and like lots of access, you know? So when fires
it's still
have
problems getting out of there.
but it's like, it's along the main like Nikolai and those are like big roads and there's hydrants everywhere. It's like my issue's been like, yeah, a fire by Audrey's place where there's like that super narrow bridge and
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's only two
way
ways out
more
of
like
here.
fuel buildup. That's been like yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those
People
guys are
that
gonna have
want it,
troubles getting out. What?
Hmm?
people that want help and are asking for it actively right now, to me, that's a big priority too. And so, along Gordon Street, if Audrey wants to help coordinate something there, that'd be cool. Um, anything that we can do around Lower Maclay that's, right in your zone too, or Bill near you, anything like that, I'm
Uh,
happy to focus on. Just let me know
do
what you want to do.
you want me to
I think
put
I'm
you in touch with
probably outside of
Tom?
anything.
Hmm?
Marshall, I can put you in touch with Tom.
Okay.
Guys, yeah.
Tom to
Yeah.
talk about that. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay.
Um, so I will have Monica help with any kind of event that we organize, and she's
Mhm.
got certain days that she's available. She
Okay.
was talking about a bunch of Wednesdays coming up, and I said, well, most likely people are going to want to do a Saturday. And so I think she said the next Saturday she has available isn't until April.
Okay.
So we could wait and do one in April, and we would just need to do like the bird survey to make sure we have that taken care of, but that's not a huge deal.
Okay.
Just let me know what's interest to the group.
I
Yeah,
got a question.
we could
Yeah.
try
Question for you,
next
Marshall.
Saturday.
In terms of fire suppression, I mean, it's good to get rid of the invasives, like blackberries and things, but is that in- is that critical to suppressing fire as opposed to say just falling down limbs and heavy debris?
I think those three types of fuels are probably all equally important because they all work like working together make the hazard most significant. So you got like the fine fuels all right along the edges. That's where the fire is going to start because it's going to be a cigarette or a spark from a car.
Yeah,
That has to happen, and then it has to go to the ladder fuels, and then it has to go up into the trees, and that's
yeah.
when we have a real disaster. So
But
they're all
are you
important.
asking if like if the larger stuff is a higher priority or versus the BlackBerry?
Yeah, the blackberries and I understand the ladder fuels and the blackberries. I thought, well, if they're kind of like it's not that dry, is it that big of a problem?
Yeah,
Or are
I
you
mean, we're
thinking
talking
with the
about like
blackberries?
I think they're more
Or,
combustible.
okay,
I think they're more combustible than like living because they do dry out.
Yeah, I mean everything's resistant to combustion when it's full of water and the
yeah.
humidity is high. It's when stuff dries out. And ivy is not that flammable. Go take a green ivy leaf and
Oh
try to
no,
light
it won't
it on
grow.
fire.
Yeah,
You probably won't even be able to get it to catch on fire, but take one
No, I
that's
know.
been dead for a few months and it'll go
Oh,
up
it'll go quick. Yeah,
like an old Christmas tree.
Yeah.
yeah,
Same
That's
as
why I'm not as
blackberry.
concerned with like the laurel around me because you can look up like the fire hardiness of a plant.
Yeah.
yeah,
You know, something we've told our Firewise members, like if you insist on planting something close to your structure, make sure it's a something that
yeah.
won't is not as combustible. But like yeah, those blackberries turn into they're like the equivalent of chaparral in the fire season. Like they
When it
will
gets dry, yeah, and
goes
especially if there's
up.
and
All right.
then so what we really want to do is make sure if they do catch on fire, they're not connected to the tree branches, and whether
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
by vines or dead branches that fell and they're hung up, like that stuff we really want to disconnect that. Like the connectivity of the fuels is kind of a bigger deal than the fuels themselves, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
yeah. I remember seeing that. You see that picture out of the California fires? It was like the palm trees. There was nothing around them, but the tops are just blowing up just because the sparks were blowing into them, and it's 80 mile
Yeah.
an hour winds and hot.
Yeah, they
It's
have
the
like
wind,
that
the wind. There's not a lot we can do about the wind. It's like
Yeah.
whatever we do with vegetation, there's that much wind. It's a problem.
uh,
Okay. Well,
oh, we're gonna
should we?
start working on the map for you. And then I think that'll be a really good way to just kind of communicate too, is just have people update their parcels and then make
Yeah.
sure you have access to the data. Um,
Well, this
especially
has been a lot. This
Yes.
has been a long meeting. So we
Yeah.
talked about a lot. Why don't we plan to have another check-in like in a week or two and just continue the conversation? Like give us some time to process what we talked about and then let's keep talking. And it's going to take a little while to get it to where we want it to be. Let's just get back together in a week or two. Keep
that sounds
talking.
great.
Okay. Nora, I'll try to get together with you. This weekend's the Ethics Bowl, so I'm swamped till then. But
No
um,
pro yeah, I'm gonna be offline for the next 2 weeks kind of. But I'll be back.
Well,
all
Nora, when
right.
you're back,
Good.
let me know and we'll get together again and keep talking, okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you
Thanks.
guys.
We'll see you all. Bye
Bye.
Bye.
bye.